Hi, thank you so much for being with us today. Your speech was very inspirational, and it feels so good to hear from the co creator of Scrum himself. We really wish you were in Tokyo with us, but we're very grateful that you're able to join us remotely. I have the privilege of asking you a few questions. So, if it's okay, I'd like to get started.
Well, thanks for having me today, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you. Okay. So in your speech, you talk about the importance of a leader who serves. And you specifically say, get the right people on the bus and get the right team in place. In Japanese business culture, there's often what we call generalists or people who aren't really an expert in a specific area. So somebody might study marketing in a university, but they'll join the organization and they'll float around the company. And they're not really they don't own a specific skill set. And it's very common pattern to outsource these people with the very special skill sets, like a data scientist or a market researcher or a marketing strategist. In this type of environment where there's lots of generalists inside the company and you're outsourcing for specific skill sets, can Scrum work, especially when we think about forming cross functional teams?
Okay, so instead of saying, can Scrum work? The question is, can you go 4 to 8 times faster? Can you innovate 4 to 8 times faster? So it's quite common that companies will have specialists and teams will need specialist input.
Mm.
So the best way I've seen this handled, and this was a consultancy of over 3,000 people in Europe. They said, okay, we need the teams to be cross-functional and to be enabled. They need to understand everything they need to do. So when they need expertise they don't have, we'll assign the specialist to the team for a sprint. And the goal of the specialist will be to inject knowledge into the team so that when they leave that team, the team has all the information they need to be fully cross-functional. And so by doing this continuous knowledge injection into teams, they can capture the speed that's possible with Scrum. So it's all about thinking differently about how you deploy people in order to enable radically improved innovation and performance.
Mhm. Thank you. I'm on speed and innovation. I know that is one of the core principles in Scrum. What do you do when teams aren't delivering business value at a fast enough pace? We understand you want to give teams enough space to be autonomous and we want to stay away from micromanagement. But what do you do when teams aren't that fast?
Okay, so leadership needs to understand the dynamics of a team. And the patterns that I talked about in my presentation are critical. So a team is not performing. What it needs to happen is there needs to be a backlog for the team that they can deliver, that is proven they can deliver from previous sprints, no matter how small. And then they need to deliver that at the end of the sprint. At the same time, they need to look at what's blocking them from moving faster, remove those blocks. So the next sprint, they go faster, 10% faster.
Mhm.
So this dynamic of enabling a team to move more quickly, you can set up by the way you work the environment. And if you start to pressure the team or tell the team, micromanage the team, that will make it impossible for them to do what I'm talking about, okay? So it's not that we don't want more performance. We want to see more performance consistently every sprint. And in my Rocket Mortgage example, if there was a Scrum Master on a team that could not improve, they removed the Scrum Master. So they did not tolerate teams not improving. Now, think about this. If a team improves 1% a day, at the end of the year, they're 37 times faster. So this is the secret. And the Japanese leadership needs to know how to put this in motion. It's really like managing a sports team. The sports model is a good one. Okay, you put the team on the field, they try to get a goal. Why did they not get the goal? Okay, maybe they were moving in the wrong way. Maybe somebody wasn't doing the job. Okay, so then the coach coaches the team and then puts them back on the field. But the coach is not running out in the field in the middle of the game trying to reposition people. That would cause the team not only to lose, but they would be the umpire would stop the play. That's not allowed, right? So we need to think of this like a sports team. Now, if a player is consistently not delivering on the field, they're off and they're put on the bench, right? And then they're personally coached by the team. And they're not putting it back into play until they understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, and when they need to do it. And players who consistently are not good at the game, they're traded out and you try to bring in better players, right? That's the way sports teams work. To win in business today, you need to build great sports teams.
Very insightful. Thank you so much. So on that note, this is specifically true in Japan. You can't fire people or you can't lay people off. It's the employment laws in Japan are very strict, and you can't easily fire people inside the organization. What would you recommend, or do you have any advice for people to learn new skill sets or new mindsets to thrive on a Scrum team?
Well, this is the reason I use the Rocket Mortgage example, because they made sure they had the right people on the team, and they made sure they had the right product owners and Scrum Masters, and they moved people around, but they didn't fire anyone. So in places where they really need to innovate and they really need to deliver, they build great sports teams.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. Next question. Japanese business culture is very hierarchical, but it's also very consensus driven. Decisions are made through consensus across various levels of the organization. Do you have any advice to overcome this hierarchical yet consensus driven culture through the Agile transformation?
The Scrum has consensus-driven processes within the teams and even across the teams. The hierarchy in Scrum comes through the product backlog. So the product backlog, there is even consensus building about that backlog, but at the end of the day, the chief product owner's backlog will be executed in the order that the chief product owner finally orders it based on all the consensus input. So there is a combination of hierarchy and consensus. The biggest problem for leadership, and we have this problem with the Germans too, is that the German senior leadership wants to change the chief product owner's backlog. Why? Because some customers called them up and complained. So this week, the chief executive officer is going to change the backlog in all the teams. And what this does is across the company, it makes the whole organization go less than half as fast. So this is what the leadership needs to decide. do you want to go fast and win?
Mhm.
Or do you want to go slow and lose? And I remind you that Tesla sells many fewer cars than Toyota, but the profitability per car is much larger than Toyota. And the value of the company is 4 times Toyota. So this is the problem that agility creates for an old style company. Now, and historically, Toyota figured out how to win against the US auto manufacturers. They even drove, I predicted in the early 90s that General Motors was going to go bankrupt because Toyota was better at delivering.
Mhm.
They improved the process efficiency. But now Tesla has taken the next step forward, and the level of agility is about 1,000 times faster than Ford or General Motors. Now Tesla is going to put Ford and General Motors out of business. Probably not Ford. Ford will survive, but probably General Motors will go bankrupt again at some point and need to be bailed out by the government. And the question is, what is going to happen to Toyota in the midst of this? Now, I know I've trained Toyota people in Europe, in the United States, and even in Japan. I know they're very smart people. I know they're trying out the Scrum. But their stock price is improving a little bit, not as fast as some of the other companies I showed, but that's a good sign. They realize they need to get agile. When I met with the CIO in Europe, he said, you know, our mission at Toyota is to put the fun back in driving. We realized we were too boring. and then he took me out to the new hydrogen car they just manufactured. And it was a lot better than a Prius, right? So people at Toyota are really trying. And this is, I'm sure, true throughout Japanese industry. They're trying to improve. They're trying to innovate faster. All of these.
Absolutely. That OODA loop that we talked about, definitely. In your experience, what are some key success factors for an agile transformation in a hybrid work environment? So a lot of people are working remotely. Some people are going back into the office. And it's said that remote Scrum teams tend to lack transparency. Do you have any advice or things that would make the agile transformation work in this type of environment?
Well, one of the remarkable things about Scrum is that it works just as remotely and in hybrid environments as it does if you have people in the same room, if you implement it properly. So, for example, I'm going to into a meeting out of this meeting with a global team. There are people in the Ukraine and Greece and the United States. I'm here in Massachusetts. And we have a backlog that's driven by the product owner that everybody has visibility into that backlog. Anybody can add something to the backlog. Everybody sees it. So we know from the point of view of the work to be done, we know exactly what it is. We know exactly how much is done every day. The transparency is the same as it is if we were all working in the same building. So we've written multiple papers on this, showing that the first one we did on this, showing it was a globally distributed team, half of the people in Russia, half of the people in Canada, United States, and every team had half of their people in Russia and the rest in Canada and America. So every single team was hybrid, 100%.
Wow.
That team was going 8 times faster than a traditional waterfall team. And in fact, when they extended the when they doubled the number of teams by bringing on the Russians, more than double the output. They actually got an acceleration by having more hybrid teams. The main reason for that was that the Russians did better Scrum than the Americans. It's because there were Russians on every team that taught the Americans how to do Scrum better. So it is true, and you have to be careful about this. If you're not disciplined in your Scrum execution and you move to a hybrid team, it will get worse, right? So you can have a terrible experience by people not executing Scrum well. And by that, I mean, the backlog is not clear, it's not visible, you don't have a strong product owner, people are not working that backlog and trying to work together with team. They're not having a good sprint review with everything's done. They have a shippable increment at every sprint or more often. All of these things are critical for Scrum to work, whether it's hybrid or in the same room. So my recommendation is don't worry about whether the teams are hybrid or not. Just implement the true Scrum that we talked about in the presentation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's definitely motivating to hear. I have one final question. I loved hearing about the military leaders that have inspired you. And I want to know what is the most important thing to you personally as a leader, and what would you say your leadership style is?
Well, I think the thing that seems to be the most important as I work around the world with teams is people come up to me and they say, well, what if people on my team don't want to do Scrum? Or they say, the management isn't really supporting us and get demoralized. And the reason I showed the Shaolin monks is that the Shaolin monks are not demoralized when they get attacked. So leadership means you are going to look at the situation, and no matter how bad it is, you're going to improve that situation. And that is fundamentally your job. And to complain about the problems is not doing your job. Your job is to identify those problems and systematically remove them and do it quickly and expertly, no matter how tough it is, right? So I remember at West Point as a cadet, when I walk into the gym every day, there was a big sign at the top of the gym, a quote from General MacArthur. And he said, and the quote was, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Agile transformations are not easy. It requires real leadership at every level, at the management level, at the coaching level, at the team level, at the individual developer level. And so when you have a problem, that's an opportunity to be prioritized, not something to make you feel bad and demoralized and make you not good at what you're doing, right? So leadership at every level, and for the top leadership, having that mentality and the spirit of that vision of overcoming and being able to communicate that to the people so they feel anything possible. That is what leadership is all about.
Thank you so much. It really makes me think of the Scrum values and how important commitment and focus is. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for sitting down with me. And next time, we really hope that you can make a stop in Tokyo.
Well, it's a great opportunity, pleasure for me to work with the Japanese people, because a lot of where Scrum comes from comes through Professors Takeuchi and Tanaka and their wisdom drawn from the Japanese people. So I'm just building on top of that, and whatever I can bring back, what I've learned from Japanese people, whatever I can bring back to help, I'm always grateful to do it.
Oh, thank you so much. I think everybody at Scrum Inc. Japan, we feel the same way, and we really empathize, and we're very lucky to work with great leaders like you. Thank you.